years. The United Auto Workers Union is on strike against all big three automakers at the same time. So far, there are nearly 13,000 workers who have walked off the job after a new contract could not be negotiated. And earlier today, President Biden touted the benefits of unions.
Unions raise workers' wages, they said, incomes, increase home ownership, increase retirement savings, increase access to critical benefits like sick leave and child care, and reduce inequality, all of which strengthen our economy for all workers. That's because unions raise standards across the workplaces and entire industries, pushing up wages and strengthening benefits for everyone.
This is the story of the day. It's a story of the Midwest. It could be that way, Chris, for quite some time. What's at stake here for President Biden, who describes himself as the most pro-union president ever?
Well, the 70s nostalgia trip that America has been on, we've had the inflation, we've had political violence, we've had all of these other things, and now we have industrial policy, we have strikes, we have a Democratic president, as Lyndon Johnson once did, trying to come in and quell labor unrest with automakers. The problem for Biden is the union seems to be taking a very hard line.
Very hard, yeah.
A very hard line here. And as we've seen with the actors and writers striking in Hollywood, once you get into a strike, getting back out is really hard. So Joe Biden wants credit with the union so that he can say to them, look, I'm your guy. You're going to have to cut me some slack because we can't afford to have a recession here, because that's really what we're talking about. If this goes sideways in swing states in the upper Midwest, this is very bad for Biden. So he's got a lot on the line.
So the president, Julia, is sending in his top negotiators, Gene Sperling, one of the most revered economists on the Democratic side, senior advisor to the White House, Julie Su, over at the Labor Department. He's sending the top officials in.
He's sending them in, but like Chris said, look, they're taking a hardline stance. We've been in the writer's strike out in L.A. for how long now? Quite some time. So I don't really see an end in sight. And just to piggyback on something Chris said, he talked about how this is going to be rough for Biden in some of these swing states. Well, add that on to the down-ballot Democrats who are running in the Senate. Sherrod Brown in Ohio, the last statewide elected Democrat. In Michigan, you know, this is a seat that should be not relatively easy for Alyssa Slotkin, but something she could win somewhat easily. That probably is giving some momentum to Republicans.
We talk about the swing states, but you know, one of the facilities where there's a strike right now is Missouri, right? And when you talk about down ballot candidates, you never know where this moves, Ashley.
Well, absolutely. But I also think that Mike Rogers is probably not happy that there's a strike, but this actually would help him tremendously.
Candidate in Michigan.
Senate candidate in Michigan, former congressman. But I also think that President Biden looks like he was asleep at the wheel. If he's sending his big people in today, well, what were they doing publicly 2 weeks ago? I know that they said that they were involved, but it still happened, so their involvement didn't make it stop.
So the president's been making calls. We know Debbie Dingell told us, Congresswoman from Michigan on the show. The White House has said it. Is this an asleep at the wheel moment, or is this doing everything he can, Kurt, by getting his top folks out there on the road saying,
I have to imagine that they were doing a lot of back channeling behind the scenes that wasn't public. And you don't do anything publicly in the beginning of this, because if you do it and it happens, you look powerless and neutered. But if you come in and something actually gets done and you help get a solution, well, then you were part of the solution and you can take credit for that. I think ultimately, politically speaking, it all depends on how long this goes and how it actually ends. If you look at it now, it's like, yeah, it looks bad. It's not great politics. But you can't tell me that anything happening right now is something we're going to be talking about in November of next year, because I just don't believe that.
All right, well.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.